So can I start now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but this time sound is lots of echoing is there. But anyway, no problem. I'll
Yes, sir.
start.
You can start.
Okay, okay. Well, friends, uh, we all know. I don't think that today we need to go a lot in the historicity of this topic, that is discourse analysis. What I'll be doing today, I'll be talking about what is discourse analysis, when it emerged, why it emerged, and why it has become so popular uh, as one of the tools of analysis in qualitative method of research. And then, uh, I'll definitely share some of the examples uh, taking from the research which has used discourse analysis as a tool of analysis from different fields. And definitely, in the end, I'll be talking about the concrete steps, how to conduct it. And lastly, I'll raise some questions also, right? This is what I have decided to do today. But I'll start with the discourse analysis with this understanding that we all know Michael Foucault, you know, who, I mean, he's considered one of the pioneers of this, but and that's why what I mean, majority of the credit goes to Foucault. Foucauldian perspectives, and there are other perspectives as well, how to conduct it and why it is so as it is so, etc., etc. See, discourse analysis as a term, right, or as a tool which is used in what you call qualitative research, uh, is very, very popular, particularly after 80s. Yeah. So in around 1965, 1970, it became very popular. So first, let's try to understand what is this in short, and then definitely as and when the need will arise, I'll talk about different shades of this. So discourse analysis is considered as a uh, analytic tool of the research method, according to some of the research scholars. Some research scholars have identified no, discourse analysis can be considered as a research method itself. So there are, differential opinions about this. So if I think it is a research method in itself, then what is it? If discourse analysis is accepted as a research method itself, then what is its aims? What are its purposes, etc., etc.? So discourse analysis is a research method. If it is a research method as such, then it is for studying the written or spoken languages. I repeat, it is uh, for studying written or spoken languages in relation to its social context. This is the main underlying point, friends. So you can say that the discourse analysis is a research method for studying written or spoken language in relation to its social context. If this understanding is kept in mind, then we can say that it also aims to understand how language is used in real life situations. How it is used in real life situations. Then the question arises that suppose I have to use the discourse analysis, then what are the things that I should focus on? Or in other words, you can say when you do discourse analysis, what are the points on which you would like to focus on? So keeping that in mind, what my suggestion will be, and various readings and the various writing suggests that the purposes and effects of different types of languages, right? Number one. And the second thing that you'll have to focus on is the cultural rules and the conventions in communication. Okay, well, that's very important. And the third is that you can say that how values, beliefs, and assumptions are communicated either uh, through written language or through spoken languages. And apart from these three focal points, another focal point that should be kept in mind while using discourse analysis is how language use relates to its a social, political, and historical context. So when discourse analysis is used for any kind of research, and particularly analysis of written and spoken language, then now the focal point should be, or your focus should be around all these points. Let me repeat what were the points. First, I said that the what is the purposes, what are the effects of different types of language that is there in a particular social context. Second, what are the cultural rules and the conventions in the communication? For example, see in our culture, particularly in Indian culture, maybe in other culture also, I haven't seen, it appears to us very, very, what do you call, strange that suppose two individual, I mean, I'm talking about the spoken language, there is a fight between the two individuals. And when both the individuals become angry and they start shouting at each other like anything, like cats and dogs, what happens? Both the individuals start, and particularly both the individuals are the males, they start attacking each other, abusing each other. But when they act literally abuse each other, what they do? Have you noticed? They abuse their sisters and the mothers. See, there is a fight between the two individuals. Okay, so they should have been, even they are abusing each other using foul languages, foul words, abusive words. They can do it, you know, uh, in a very different manner where only the two individuals are affected. But suppose even the two families that you I mean, both of them want to hurt each other's family standing, or maybe the entire ancestors. There are wars. But generally, it has been observed in Indian context across the cultural orientation, because within India also there is a cultural setting is different. They start, abusing each other, right? And for the and to abuse each other, the kind of language they use, they are directly associated with either the sister or the mother. Okay, in a very cruel form. And that's why it is very important to understand the cultural modes of operate, how people operate in a particular society and culture as far as the language is concerned. So cultural rules and conventions in the communication, that's the second point that you need to uh, concentrate or focus upon. And as I said earlier, it's very important if you really want to analyze the communication, particularly the written or the spoken language, how the values, how the beliefs of that society and culture, and the assumptions are communicated to one another or at society at large. And last, as I said, everything happens in a purely socio-political context where history is also important. How language use relates to its social, political, and historical context. So you can say that discourse analysis is a very, very common qualitative research methods particularly in many humanities and social science disciplines, including linguistics, number one, sociology, number two, anthropology, number three, psychology, number four, education, fifth, and the other cultural studies. Okay. Then it is used for what? That's the another point or the another question might be coming to your mind. So conducting discourse analysis means examining how language functions. I repeat, how language functions and how meaning out of that language is created in different social context. So same word will have different meanings. Like if you use a word, for example, cashier, so you know what is the what is cashier means. Cashier means an individual who keeps the cash of that organization, no? Or accountant. You know, accountant is the one who keeps the accounts of that organization, and that organization could be anything else. Similarly, who is an officer in a given setting? Okay, whether that organization is the uh, educational institutions or the factories, or what you can say is any other establishment. So suppose there are three words, no? So if you use these words individually, that the officer has called or for an explanation from the cashier, connotation will be different. No? Or officer has asked the accountant to produce the accounts of so and so things. Or the cashier has consulted the officer whether the cash should be distributed or not, etc., etc. But suppose if somebody, suppose you have entered in that organization, and the very first man on a early morning in the Monday is reporting to you, you know the officer has cashiered the accountant. Now the connotation of your word, okay, is completely changed. Okay, so conducting discourse analysis means examining how language functions and how meaning is created in different social contexts. And therefore, it can be said that it can be applied to any instance of oral language, as I was talking about, the written language, as well as, friends, non-verbal aspects of the communication. You all know that in movies, in serials, or the documentaries, or even in ads, the actors don't utter even a single word, but through gesture, they communicate a whole lot of things. No, recently during this COVID-19 pandemic, even I myself have seen some of the documentaries, some of the web series and others. Sometimes directors, when the script writer writes, they don't want that at least one or two actors to speak a lot verbally, but through non-verbal gestures, they convey much more than even their written words. And therefore, it can be asserted that it can be applied to any instance of written or oral languages, as well as non-verbal aspects of communication. What, as I said just now, such as tone and gesture. Word is same, but the tone is different, and the different tone of a particular word will convey or communicate completely different meanings, right? And therefore, again, when we talk about the discourse analysis as a research method, so what are the materials that are suitable for discourse analysis? As I said just now, any written things, Any written things means it could be the books, it could be newspapers, it could be the periodicals, it could be a newspaper article, it could be the news reporting, it means anything. Or you can say if you are doing a research related to marketing and the business, then it could be the marketing materials such as the brochures and advertisements. Suppose you are using discourse analysis in the context of the business and the government, then it could be the business documents and the government documents, right? Or sometimes, the websites speak a lot. Different forums related to a particular organization speak a lot. Even social media posts. Like recently, I have been told that US, when you will apply now or you apply for the visa to the US, to visit US, they will not, they are specifically asking for your social accounts as well. And even if you don't provide, just with the help of Google or something else, they come to know, right, which social sites you are using and for what purpose from the security point of view. So the social media, why? Because they want to understand that what kind of media post you have posted, what kind of, suppose somebody has posted, you haven't posted anything, but somebody else has posted on you or this, and how you have commented upon them. So websites, forums, social media, posts, comments, etc., etc. And as I said, it could be interviews, it could be conversations, it could be anything which has the power to communicate, whether that is there in the black and white, or that is there in the non-verbal form, or that is there even, in your socio-cultural practices. Okay, so by analyzing these types of discourse, what researcher does? Researcher aims to gain an understanding of, because I said it is in social context, social groups, and how do they communicate. Then one very simple question might be coming to your mind. How is discourse analysis, is it different from other methods? I'll try to do a comparison of the discourse analysis and the content analysis. Okay. But before that, how is discourse analysis different from other methods? So unlike linguistic approaches that focus only on the rules of the language, and that too the rules of the language use, discourse analysis, this is the linguistic approach. But how discourse analysis is different from the linguistic approach? Discourse analysis emphasizes, and that's very important and pertinent that we need to keep in mind, and that is contextual meaning of language. I repeat, friends, contextual meaning of language, not the literal meaning of the language or the rules of language use. No, that's the job of the linguistic analysis or distinguished approach of analysis. But the discourse analysis emphasizes the contextual meaning of the language. And as we have just now discussed, that the same word, but the context is different. So the same word many times convey the different meaning. I'll give you another example. Uh, uh, if you can recall, just try to recall, few years back, what astronomers did? Instead of 9 planets, they said, oh, there are 8, because the Pluto, due to certain deficiency of deficient characteristics, cannot be identified as a planet. So what the astronomers of all over the world, they decided that instead of calling 9 planets, now we are going to recognize only 8 planets. And they excluded Plato from that. So what happened? What happened? What was the consequence of that phenomena? Now the Pluto word, okay, not only it remained noun, it became verb. So suppose somebody says, oh, he has been Plutoed from the organizations. It means he has been excluded from the organization. And that's what I'm saying. What is important is the contextual meaning of the language. But you know what happened? After again some period, maybe 5 years, 10 years, again they included the Pluto. Now, don't you think that it means, in short, what I'm trying to say, that if you are particular about using the discourse analysis, you should also know about the cultural dimensions of a particular phenomena. So our values, beliefs, and assumptions are communicated. And in Indian tradition, since long we have said that there are 9 planets. And in Indian mythology, we worship all the 9 planets as Navagraha Puja. Okay. Anyway, so this is one thing that I wanted to make it very clear, that if anybody is interested to know or ask you that how is a discourse analysis different from other methods. So it's not simple linguistic analysis, or simply we don't apply linguistic approach to analyze, right? Why? Because linguistic approach, focuses only on the rules of language use. On the contrary, discourse analysis emphasizes the contextual meaning of the language. This is one thing. Another thing, it focuses on the social aspects of the communication. In the beginning itself, I have said social aspects of communication. Okay. And the ways people use language to achieve specific effects. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean? When I say that the discourse analysis focuses on the social aspects of communication and the ways people use language to achieve specific effects. For example, suppose to build trust, or to create a doubt, to evoke emotions, or to manage conflict. Like if you have to build trust, your communication strategy has to be a different one. Like the 2 political parties in recent elections in Bihar did. One political party, they said instead of talking, because that political party knew very well that, they used the terminology recently in one of the TV debate. I did contest that understanding. I say in politics, what is happening, we are using bigger words, okay, theoretically, but practically the same are completely different one. So one of the political scientists used the terminology that, I'll not name the political party, that the political party X emerged in that context because it started advocating social justice. So I raised the question, do you really think so? When you're saying social justice, it means justice for all. It means justice for all means when I'm saying whether they belong to X caste or Y caste, X religion or Y religion, X culture, socio-cultural background or Y socio-cultural background, etc., etc. So what appear? So we use, okay, social. Actually, it was the caste justice, and that's not wrong. I'm not saying, I'm not talking, or one shouldn't. Researcher is not interested whether that was right or wrong. Researcher may be interested only to understand that phenomena from the discursive analysis, so discourse analysis. Okay. Now, so that political party say, oh my God, 30 years back, we had talked about that. And on the basis of that, we ruled 15 years. Okay. Now, the opposition most often call it the jungle Raj or something like that. Now, what to do next? How to communicate with the people who are going to vote in favor of X, not in favor of Y. So what the X did, X said, oh, what are the things that are important today? And this is, this strategy is used, and psephologists are using discourse analysis very extensively, very extensively today. Anyway, so they said, oh, we think that because last time also when we attacked this government, and then we attacked that, oh, this government is not providing job opportunities. So if this announced, political party X suppose announces that we will give you 1 lakh job, then the opposition, particularly the incumbent opposition, say, oh, so let's, we are going to announce that we will provide you the just double of that. So maybe the 3 lakhs or maybe the 2 lakhs. Now, to build this trust, what kind of communication you will be using? Or to develop the distrust that no, in the case of X, which is saying that we'll provide 1 lakh, in comparison to the case Y, the political party Y is trying to say that no, if a political party X is going to provide the 1 lakh job, we'll provide you the 2 lakh jobs to the 2 lakh people or 1 lakh people. Now, do you think that both the political party, when they are using a particular language to communicate or to establish communicative connections with the electorate, they will be using the same strategy? No. If they have to build the trust, strategy will be, communicative strategy will be completely different. If they have to build distrust or they develop the distrust, communicative strategy will be different one. Or to create doubt. Oh, no, don't believe. Don't believe. And so X and Y both are saying, X is saying don't believe Y, because Y haven't given you even 10,000. How can it give you 2 lakh? And Y is saying, no, don't forget that time when even the to provide the jobs to the people was not even their priority, because they indulged only in the caste questions or etc. etc. So communicative strategy will be completely different one. And that's why, friends, I have made a point that if uh, if you have to develop the trust or to build the trust, I should say build the trust, your communicative strategy has to be different one. Now you want to analyze whether political party X was successful to build the trust or political party Y. So in the sphere of politics, from the socio-political context, you can use this, right? And for that, you don't have to do anything. What you have to do? Suppose take the political party, a case, political party X as a case and political party Y as a case, or even single case, right? To do two comparative cases. And what you will say, what are the things they communicated to their electorates verbally, number one, in the written form. So their pamphlet could be their various sources, their manifesto, etc. etc. And what were the things neither they spoke nor they wrote, but very successfully they were successful to communicate to its electorate, who, and those things worked in their favor. So that's why I would like to make a point, friends, that the discourse analysis focuses on the social aspects of communication, number one, and the ways people use language, in our case, the political leaders or the political workers of a particular political party, use language to achieve specific effects. And the example of a specific effects could be to building the trust, to build the trust, or to create the doubt, or to evoke the emotions, no, or to manage the conflict. Like suppose there is a history that a particular party A has never emphasized on social harmony, and all of a sudden say, if we come to the power, we will try to maintain this social harmony. And since they have always worked on the principle of disharmony, distrust, right, and the doubt, how did they manage to do that? Okay, so instead of focusing on smaller units of language, such as sounds, words, or phrases, discourse analysis is used to study larger chunks of language. That's why when people say that one of the major goals of or major aims of language is to communicate, I don't buy this theory. No, friends. They are used not to communicate certain things. They are used to build the trust. They are used to create the doubt in the minds of the people. They are used to evoke the emotions. They are used to manage the conflict so that the harmony and the peace can be maintained. And therefore, it will be not incorrect to say that instead of focusing on smaller units of language, such as sounds, words, or phrases, discourse analysis is used to study larger chunks of language, such as entire conversations, texts, or collections of the text. And therefore, and for that, what the researcher will have to do is this, that they have to select the sources that can be analyzed on multiple levels. So discourse analysis, as far as the level of communication and what is analyzed is concerned, if you will do a comparison, you'll you'll find yourself, you all are learned one, that if suppose the level of communication is a vocabulary, so what you will analyze? Words and phrases can be analyzed for what? Words and phrases can be analyzed for ideological associations, for formality, or euphemistic and metaphorical content. And suppose the level of communication is a grammar of the sentence structure or the conversations. So what you are expected to analyze? The way that sentences are constructed. For example, the verb tenses, active or passive construction, and the use of imperative and questions, or anything else. Like some people will say that they write always, that they prefer to write sometimes in passive voice instead of active voice. No? So can reveal aspects of intended meaning. Similarly, suppose my level, I want to analyze from the perspective of the level of communication of structure. So suppose the level of communication is structure, what is analyzed? So the structure of a text can be analyzed for what? The structure of a text can be analyzed for how it creates emphasis or builds a narrative. And similarly, what is the yona? Suppose the level of communication is the yona. So what is analyzed? Text can be analyzed in relation to the conventions and communicative aims of their yona. For example, in our case, political speeches or tabloid newspaper articles. Similarly, suppose I have to do discourse analysis in terms of level of communication, and the level of communication is a non-verbal communication. So what is analyzed there? What you will be analyzing as a researcher? Non-verbal aspects of speech, such as I said just now, tone of voice, pauses, gestures, and sounds like No, what's the meaning of and see, sometimes you do, when an Indian in the in that culture, there is a nothing like but see, in Western perspective, people will always, they will speak one sentence, and before they start speaking second sentence, they'll say always they'll say if I know everything, why are you communicating to me? Humorously you can say that, but that's the part of the culture. So nonverbal communication, right? Nonverbal aspects of a speech, such as tone of voice, pauses, gestures, and sounds like can reveal aspects of what? They can reveal aspects of speakers' intentions, speakers' attitudes, and above all, speakers' emotions. Have you observed? Suppose if I'm not comfortable in a particular language, right? And if somebody is saying something, and if I have to express my astonishment or my surprise, we fumble for the words. Okay, suppose the level of communication is conversational codes. Now, what you will analyze? So you will analyze here the interaction between people in a conversation. For example, if you read when Socrates was charged that he will be given punishment to drink poison, what he did, to defend himself, he wanted to make himself knowledgeable. And to make himself knowledgeable in this context where he is charged by the state, and the charge is that you have acted against the state, and the charge is that you have polluted the you are polluting and you have polluted the minds of the youngs of the Greeks. What he did, he went to meet a person in Greece who was charged that he had killed his father. I don't know you people know that or not. Please read that dialogue between the two. And then series of questions he's asking. He's asking what was the charge, why this charge, okay, and actually what you did, actually what it happened. Recently, one of the movies was also there. I'm forgetting the name of the movies where you know the lawyer who has pretended that I'm going to defend you in the court. I'm forgetting the name of the movie. I'm going to defend you in the court, so you have to tell me the truth. And she's fully aware that this lawyer is going to defend me, but many times she is to say, report, the false things. I'm forgetting the name of the movie. Just watch that movie. And from the discourse analysis point of view, you watch that movie, particularly the conversation between the two. Very simple. So conversational codes, it means the interaction between people in a conversation, such as, if some people say turn taking, interruptions, and listener response, all these things can reveal aspects of cultural conventions and social codes. I'll give you an example. If you ask somebody, I cannot show you the gesture, or maybe you will be able to see my gesture, friends, that in North India, I don't know whether you are in a position to see me or not. In North India, if you are asking someone and you want that he or she should say yes, so he will, and suppose he is not saying anything, he will say like this. So up and down. You compare with in India within. taking a sample from the South India. The typical difference in the gesture will be they always say this, left to right head. It means yes. So, culturally also you should know how to interpret the body gesture, and that happens. Fine. Okay. So these are the some of the things that you need to keep in mind while um, analyzing this. But before I talk about that, how to conduct discourse analysis and what are the various steps that I would like to talk in the end, some theoretical issues or their theoretical concerns and the main point I would like to discuss with you. So let me start with very interesting understanding of uh, like one of my friends uh, she's specialist in working in the area of discourse analysis, and you must be doing the name Linda Graham, and she's done a lot of work, and she published one paper, and this paper was presented at Australian Association for Research in Education way back, years back in Sydney annual conference. And in this paper, very beautifully, right, uh, she's taken some stand. I would like to share with you because I had access to that and I read that discourse analysis, according to her, it's not a fixed term, as I have told you right now. According to her, the according to Linda, uh, full name is Linda J. Graham. So according to Linda, I call her Linda. Uh, it's a very, very flexible term. So what one is doing is greatly dependent on the epistemological framework being drawn upon. I'm not saying you read paper, maybe I'll be in a position to send you that paper. Uh, so very clearly say it depends on the epistemological framework being drawn upon. So it appears that many scholars using discourse analysis within a Foucaultian framework have adopted that is called Foucauldianistic reticence to declare a method, a and here in this paper, she's talked about that why this might be so. It means the main question was that the difficulty in locating concise descriptions as to how to go about doing discourse analysis is because there is no such thing. I mean, she has read this is advanced paper, but anyway, I did like this paper. Uh, so in this paper, she discusses why this might be so and engage with the awkward tension that arises when one attempts to do post-structural work whilst still satisfying the conventions of academic writing and scholarship. So despite there being no model for discourse analysis, uh, Foucault uh, uh, um, claims to be drawing on a Foucaultian framework. There's a very real danger in one's work being dismissed as unFoucaultian. So if one doesn't get it right, right? So similarly, if you are not, I mean, you are stating or you are intending to do discourse analysis, but if you are not doing in a correct perspective, right perspective, the result will not be, so exciting and so meaningful. So for this reason, some perceive Foucault theory as inaccessible and dangerous. Like there is a author called Farrell. Farrell says that uh, which deters some researchers, particularly those in more practice-oriented fields, from engage with this form of analysis. So anyway, so her actual intention was to develop what might be called a descriptive analytic and a methodological plan, which she can set about doing a form of post-structural discourse analysis, and that is this. But anyway, taking a clue from this, uh, wonderfully she talks about the the different perspective, particularly quoting the Sandra Taylor. Uh, but I think before I talk about the methodological principles that has lent weight to the epistemological claims about the superior rigor of linguistically based methodologies, like this one, um, critical discourse analysis, which she has called, over those informed by the work of Foucault and other post theories. So post-structuralism has contested authorial authority and the validity of a fixed meaning, because the meaning is not fixed. So this does not necessarily lead to what said calls the tiresome playfulness of postmodern criticism. Okay, but anyway, this is a slightly advanced one, and the whole paper uh, talks about that why it is to some extent valid and why to a great extent that is not valid. And she has given the mapping system of the formation, how the statement can be revalidated, etc., etc. But anyway, this is a wonderful paper. But before you read this paper, what I'll suggest you that you must uh, go through the preliminary articles that are there. So, in short, from there is another one written by uh, Hoggs, and Hodges has done Brian David Hodges uh, uh, very in a subtle way. So let me focus on that more, and then I'll come to this. So what is the recent phenomena as a discourse analysis? Theoretically, what is it all about? So discourse analysis is about, as I said, not only the use of the language, study of the use of language, but analyzing the socio-cultural dimensions of the use of the language as well. Why? Because the term is used in many different ways. That's why I have quoted Linda. She says that no, it cannot be perceived as a single entity, or it cannot be perceived as the um, the concept which has got the fixed meaning. So, what is a formal linguistic discourse analysis that they're there? But anyway, further I go for that, I would like to let you know that sometimes people get confused as the linguistic analysis, discourse analysis, and content analysis, they are the same. As I told you, friends, no, they are not the same. There are differences, and which people usually don't talk about. But before that, but I have shown you the differences between the linguistic approach of the analysis of the language, and another is called the discourse analysis approach to analyze the languages. So what is a formal linguistic discourse analysis? See, the first approach, formal linguistic discourse analysis, involves a structured analysis of text. Okay, in order to find general underlying rules of linguistic, or you can say communicative functional behind the text. For example, there is an author called Laxon. Laxon and his colleagues compared human and machine human dialogue. It's a very famous work. So Laxon and colleagues, when they compared human interaction and machine human dialogue in order to study the possibility of using computers to computer human conversations about patients in a particularly in a dialysis unit into a form that physicians could use to make clinical decisions. So they transcribed phone conversations between the nurses, and the 25 adult dialysis patients over a 3 month and period, and they coded almost 17,000 words, okay, by semantic type, that is called the categories of meaning, and structure. For example, what was the length of the sentence, what was the position of the word in that sentence, etc., etc. So they presented their work as a first step towards an automatic analysis of spoken medical dialogue that would allow physicians to answer questions related to patients' care by looking at summaries alone. Anyway, so this is what I wanted to tell you about the formal linguistic discourse analysis. Now let me talk about something about the empirical discourse analysis. Here what researchers do is that researchers using empirical discourse analysis do not use highly structured method, as we have seen just now, to code individual words and utterances in detail. Okay, then what they do? Then the question arises: if they are not, they don't use highly structured methods to code individual words and utterances, then what do they do as far as the empirical discourse analysis is concerned? They look for broad themes and functions of language in action using approaches called conversation analysis. And in other words, that is also known as, for example, the study of talk in interaction. Conversation analysis, in another jargon, it is known as talk in interaction. And genre analysis, the study of recurrent patterns or genres of language that share similar structure and context, such as you can say the case report, the scientific article. Sometimes, suppose if you want to understand the linguistic ability of the young scholars who publish their paper, okay, in different journals. So conversation analysis and genre analysis give more prominence to what? They don't give it the grammar, the word position, okay? The conversation analysis and genre analysis give more prominence to sociological use of language. And that's why in the beginning I said, friends, that I don't believe, because see, I, being a student of epistemologist, because my PhD is on epistemology, where I learned that there are four sources of knowledge: perception, inference, comparison, and verbal testimony. And particularly in the with reference to verbal testimony, which in Sanskrit is called the Shabd, I had some access to understand what is a word. And to your utter surprise, I don't know how far I'm correct, because I'm not a linguist. Only just during the PhD I studied that, and that too in a given particular philosophical system. That, do you think there is a really a word exist, particularly with reference to conversation and speaking? No, no word exists, friends. No sentences exist. What exists, forget about sentences, with reference to word, what would I would like to make a point is that it's the logical combination of sounds that exist. I would like to share with you my personal experience with an anecdote. When I was at Mahatma Gandhi Antarashtriya Hindi Vishwavidyalaya Wardha, so Vice Chancellor gave me an opportunity to work with the international students as a director international students affairs in the linguistic department. So when I was director, there were almost 70 to 75 students who were there, or maybe 100. And there was a guy, also people from Malaysia, Thailand, China, Europe, all were there. So suppose there is a word ma. No, in Hindi, when you say, so anybody can understand, oh, ma, mother. But the same word right? With the slight change or slight variation of arrangement of sounds indicate in a particular uh, language and in a particular sociocultural context, the meaning is dog. But what was the difference? Actually, they said, "Sir, please do something so that we can develop the Hindi linguistic skill." I said, "Why don't you speak?" And we had some measures, but I was new, so I could not understand very well. And then that he was doing a PhD, he explained to me. And that was the moment when this came to my mind. Do you think that actually words exist? Or it is something else that make us believe that the words do exist and we write the words? But in terms of communication, verbal communication, do you think the words exist? Do you think that you are understanding me right now because I'm conveying my understanding about discourse analysis through sentences and words? Don't you think they are nothing but the arrangement of the sounds? Okay. Now, coming back to our point, this was a small anecdote came into my mind, so I shared with you. What is empirical discourse analysis? Okay. So, as I said, that the empirical discourse analysis do not use highly structured method to code individual words and utterances in detail. Rather, they look for broad themes and functions of language in action using approaches called conversation analysis, and which is, in other words, known as the study of uh, what talk in interaction, talk hyphen in hyphen interaction, talk in interaction. And genre analysis, genre analysis is what? That is the study of recurrent patterns or genres of language that share similar structure and context, such as the, as I said, case report, the scientific article, etc., etc. So, conversation analysis and genre analysis give more prominence to sociological use of language than to grammatical or linguistic structures of words and sentences, and are used to study human conversations or in other forms of communication in order to do what? In order to uh, elucidate, elucidate the ways in which meanings and actions are created by individuals producing the language, which appears as a language. I told you that Lingard has also done some work. Lingard and colleagues, for example, studied communication between. There, I give you the example of what the conversation between the nurses and the patients. And Lingard has done one study on the basis of the conversation that took place between the nurses and the what you call the surgeons, uh, uh, observing different procedures in the operating room and categorize the recurrent patterns of communication. They then use their findings to draw links between interpersonal tensions, the use of language, and the occurrence of errors in the operating room. Okay, so genre analysis is that. Now, coming back to similarly within discourse analysis, people do talk about critical discourse analysis, as I was talking about the Linda's case. But Linda's paper and Linda's work is, I mean, not one step, but many steps ahead of uh, simple critical discourse analysis. But in simple critical discourse analysis, and see the beauty. Earlier, people thought that such kind of research methodologies can be used only in the humanities, in the language study, no? But no, and medical sciences. Now, in medical sciences, of course, not the which medicine will be more effective or which virus will be, the vaccine will be the suitable to contain the virus, not in that sense, but to understand the human intricacies, they're using the qualitative research methods. And that's why deliberately I'm sharing with you those papers or ideas from those papers who are capable to make us believe that there are some unique characteristics, or there are some uniqueness in the qualitative research methodology which can be used in multiple ways. So as far as the critical discourse analysis is concerned, researchers in cultural studies, sociology, and I said philosophy use the term critical discourse analysis instead of simple discourse analysis to encompass an even wider sphere that includes all of the social practices, individuals, and institutions, and that make it possible or legitimate to understand phenomena in a particular way and to make certain statements about what is true. Okay, so critical discourse analysis is particularly concerned with power and is rooted in I don't know whether I should use this term or not. You'll say every day you bring constructivism in your talk, in constructivism. So I have no hesitation to say that the critical discourse analysis is particularly concerned with power. Okay, number one. And this is rooted in constructivism. And therefore, the discourse analysis of, for example, Michael Foucault, for example, he illustrated how particular discourses systematically construct versions of the social world. Should I repeat? I won't mind, because anything which is said a different way, different perspective, and brings different insight, I love to, repeat and revise. So in the words of Michael Foucault, discourse analysis, it is illustrated how particular discourses systematically construct versions of the social world. And you can create what exactly not doesn't exist. Right? So discourse analysis at this level involves not only the examination of the text and the social use of language, but also the study of the ways in which the very existence of specific institutions and of roles for individuals to play are made possible by ways of two things. By ways of two things. And those two things are none other than thinking and speaking. For example, you can take the example of Foucault's study of madness. And if you read the Foucault's study of madness, it uncover what madness is in different historical periods and in different places. You read. So madness is not only, psychoneurotic disorder. Madness as a spiritual position. Madness as social deviancy. And madness as, of course, as it is perceived today, madness as mental illness. But suppose if you say, I'm mad about constructivism, what I'm trying to convey? Does this sentence convey that I have a mental illness regarding constructivism or something else? Similarly, there is another work done by Speed. It showed how different discourses about mental health service in use today construct individuals' identity as patients, consumers, or survivors, and are made possible by specific institutional practices and ways for individuals to be. So, friends, in a different context, there is another thing, Stone contrasted the specific discourses used in the education literature for medical patients, particularly the uh, diabetes patients, with respect to patient self-care and autonomy, with the medical literature's use of doctor-centered discourses, for example, compliance and adherence. And very brilliantly, Stone has related the resulting tension and the important implication for patients' behavior to the ways in which the roles that physicians and patients play are historically determined by different and conflicting models of what disease and healings are. If you remember, um, I don't know which day when I was talking about when people say that uh, mm, yeah, I don't think that I did mention or I didn't mention, but anyway, I'll talk about that because it will come later on. That if a doctor is treating a patient, what he should do? Should he only concentrate on the disease by which a patient is suffering, or should he only concentrate on the patient who is suffering from a particular disease or something else? Or should he or she concentrate on both as a medical practitioner? So these are some of the examples. Then the question arises, uh, what should we be looking for in this? You must be familiar with the works of the Rosers, Carl Rosers. Rosers has argued that some discourse analysis researcher suffers from scanty explanations of analytical method used. And thus, one should expect clear documentation of the sources of information used and delimitation of data sources. Right. So there are many more things, but I would like to stop here. I mean, so there is another uh, uh, mm, author, of course, from England only, UK only, and perhaps I might have shared his understanding on one of the qualitative methods, Simon Goodman, how to conduct discourse analysis, particularly in the field of psychology and education. So psychological discourse analysis. And when you will go through this paper, you will see that uh, it talks in a different tone and texture. Like suppose I want to use discourse analysis, and particularly in association with the psychological theory, which is generally known as discursive psychology, then what would be my approach, and how my approach will be completely different from general discourse analysis. And read that work, and in the year perhaps 1990. Exactly, I don't remember the year. Their Potter has described the discursive psychology as a paradigm, stating that it is a whole perspective on social life and research into it. So he suggests that if you are doing discursive psychology, do it in the framework of discourse analysis only. Uh, uh, um, uh, uh, and they are very critical of the way in which cognition is understood in psychology. I'm talking about Edwards and Potter. They have given a psychological theory that is a critical of the way in which cognition is understood in psychology. Like, do you think the way Piaget understood the concept of cognition is that the only right way to understand cognition? Because see, if the concept of the cognition itself is faulty, how can you say that you can work for your students as far as the cognitive development is concerned? And read the work of Edward and Potter. So, as far as the discursive psychology is concerned, does not reject the existence of cognition. No, I'm not trying to say that. It does claim that psychologists cannot accurately access the people really think, as people are always involved in some kind of social interaction when they speak. Like, how do you understand that what thinking is going on? Suppose you have shown me a film, or you have showed me a picture, or you have posed a question before me and you ask me, okay, please keep on talking. So what I speak, you try to understand my mind, my thinking, only through the words that I'm communicating myself to you. No, isn't it? And that's why Edward and Potter, you know, they say that no, they don't reject the existence of cognition, but it claims that psychologists cannot accurately access what people really think, as people are always involved in some kind of social interaction when they speak. Now, what is the consequence of this? As a consequence of this, uh, discursive psychologists claim that what can be presented as an accurate display of cognition, such as if I say, I saw X or I felt Y, is actually somebody doing something in that interaction. For example, let me, quote Edward and Potter only. A simple example of this may be that, like when I say I saw X or I felt Y, why it cannot be presented as an accurate display of cognition? Because it is actually what I'm doing when I'm saying I saw X or I felt Y, or I saw A and I felt B, or I say, oh, I saw alpha and I felt beta, is actually somebody doing something in that interaction. So a simple example of this may be that a speaker's utterance, it is wet outside, maybe doing more than simply reporting on a cognition. Suppose if I say, quote, it is wet outside. Now, what does it convey from the analysis point of view? It may be doing more than simply reporting on a cognition. In this case, it could be performing the social act of requesting a lift. So by pointing to the uncomfortable weather conditions, a speaker may indirectly be requesting to be driven in the addresser's car if the context allows for that indirect speech act to be performed. And suppose if someone were then to respond to the speaker, the first speaker who said it is wet outside, and suppose the other person has to respond to that speaker by saying, it is wet, would you like a lift? It is wet, would you like a lift? It could clearly be shown that the initial statement is interpreted, or you can say in discursive psychology orientation terminology, oriented to by the second speaker as a request. So by focusing on what I'm trying to convey is this: by focusing on how speakers respond to one another, okay, or you can say how speakers orient to one another, but it would be better to say that how speakers respond to one another, claims about how what speakers are doing with their talk can be supported with evidence, and with the evidence taking the form of how initial utterances are responded to. So, friends, I would like to tell you that discursive psychologists who operate in the framework of discourse analysis have regularly demonstrated that people's attitude will vary according to the social situation that they are in. Potter himself has said this. So while this variation may be problematic for psychologists attempting to access accurate cognitions, this variation is to be expected in discursive analysis. So in fact, discursive psychologists have argued that the apparent stability of attitudes in psychological research can be explained as a result of the methods that are used, which systematically reduce the opportunity for this normal variation to take place. There is another criticism of attempting to uncover attitudes comes from the use of denials in talk, right, etc., etc. Now, how to conduct a discursive analysis, particularly the DP discursive analysis? Uh, Here, I mean, there are stages of discourse analysis. So I'll be talking in short. Oh God, it's about to be 7 o'clock. So I'm going to talk about the stages of discourse analysis. What are discourses of? What are the stages of discourse analysis? At least some people say it's a 5, some people say 7, some people 8. I say it's not fixed, but now at least it varies from 5 to 8 uh, stages of discourse analysis. I'll talk about something else also. Number one, deciding on the first stage is deciding on an appropriate question for discourse analysis. See, friends, time and again I have made a point that not only in sciences, hardcore sciences or the soft sciences, even in social sciences, we should stop writing objectives for the research. We should concentrate more on research questions. And therefore, even the people who have worked in the various uh, problems of social problems using discourse analysis, they have suggested that the first stage of discourse analysis is to decide on an appropriate question for discourse analysis. So deciding on an appropriate question for discourse analysis. So appropriate research questions. Number two, picking appropriate data sources for analysis. That's the second stage. The third stage is generating a corpus. The fourth stage is transcribing the data. A whole lot of data is there, corpus of data is there. Now, what next you need to do? You need to transcribe the data. Then preliminary, the fifth stage, which is very important, is preliminary reading of the data. Some people, what they have done, they have combined the 3, 4, and 5. Okay, they say generate, transcribe, and read the data. And so in that case, it will become only 5 stages. Otherwise, it will become 8 stages. So preliminary reading of the data means what? Searching for the action orientation. Okay, the sixth is generating the results. It means discursive devices and rhetorical or interactional strategies should be used. Seventh, building a case for supporting the findings. And last but not the least, report writing, as it happens with any other research methods. So these are the, friends, 8 stages of discourse analysis, and each of these points, I mean, the 8 stages that I have just mentioned requires an elaborated discussion, not simple description, elaborated discussion, summarization, and then the description. So when I say that deciding on an appropriate question for discourse analysis, what will be that? Or if I say picking appropriate data sources for analysis, or generating, transcribing, and preliminary reading of the data, what do we mean by that? Are we talking about the corpus of the data, or the data transcription? Or when say reading the data means searching for the action orientation? What? And the next is generating the results. It means discursive devices and rhetorical, interactional strategies. And as I said, even after that, once you have generated the results, what you'll have to do in discourse, if you're using discourse analysis, you'll have to build a case to support the findings. And finally, report writing. Now, very, 1 or 2 examples I'll share with you. See, when the first stage says that deciding on an appropriate questions for discourse analysis, what does it mean? For some people, this step may appear very obvious, no? Very obvious that I have to decide the appropriate question for the discourse analysis. Very obvious. As it is very obvious to write the objectives of the research of a particular research problem. Friends, yes, it may appear as obvious, but this is the stage where many novices can fail to make sure that their question and subsequent analysis match discursive psychological and sociological theory. So any attempt at this point to try to find out what speakers think about or what speakers' attitudes are about a topic cannot be addressed by discourse analysis. Instead, a suitable questions could be something like, how do people justify X? It will be more appropriate. Or, how do people argue for Y? Or, how do people accomplish Z? Now you compare. On the one hand, you keep the questions like what a speakers think about, what a speaker's attitude are about, no? On the other side, contrary to these 2 statements, suppose somebody likes, how do people justify X? How do people argue for Y? How do people accomplish Z? I think they will. Now, choice is yours. I'm not saying anything. That's why anything and everything which appears as so obvious, in fact, friends, they are not so obvious. It demands a lot of mental exercises. So some of the good questions, examples of good questions could be, what is the writing and talk of ordinary, everyday people relating to a particular phenomena? Maybe it could be teaching, it could be learning, it could be assessment, it could be anything with reference to education. Or, or how do children interpret and construct bullying in the peer group? Or you can say, what is the precise nature of the myths? Precise nature of the stereotypes? Precise natures of the discourses and practices discussed in a particular literature? And, and how they are constituted in talk and action. So, friends, there are examples of topics to which discourse analysis can be applied, as long as the focus of the inquiry is on some kind of action orientation. Similarly, if you're talking about picking appropriate sources of data, so generally we say, okay, written form, no, so maybe written text, anything. Oral form, so oral history, oral documentation, or anything that exists in that sociocultural context orally is important for you. Or non-verbal, as I was making a point. But we should not forget that discourse analysis is concerned with what is accomplished in interaction. The most appropriate sources of data are those that contain some kind of interaction. For example, if you really want to understand the mental state or the mindset of the two great people of India, for example, Tagore and Gandhi. What do you need to do? Do you think only reading Gandhi's literature, only reading Tagore's literature will help you? Of course, they will help you, but they will not become very meaningful. From the discourse analysis point of view, if you could access to the text, which are answer to the answer given by two individuals. So suppose something Gandhi wrote to the Tagore, and then Tagore responded to Gandhi. On the basis of that responses, again Gandhi responded to the Tagore and the Tagore. So if that kind of material you could procure, for me, I think that should be considered as appropriate sources of data, friends. Why? Why am I saying so? I'm sorry, earlier I was giving examples for the medical sciences. I'm giving the example of, mostly from the education. Why? Because discourse analysis is concerned with what is accomplished in interaction. So anything and everything from the perspective of appropriateness of the sources of data are those that contain some kind of interaction. So that's why this may be different from other qualitative method, as it means that conversations rather than stand alone text, as I gave you the example, Gandhi's literature and Tagore's literature. Don't you think people are doing this? And on the basis of that only they say, oh, Gandhi is so and Tagore is so and so. So Gandhi's concept of education is so, and Tagore's concept of education is so and so. Discourse analysis doesn't approve this. But see, particularly in the field of educational research, don't we do this? And then say, oh, we are doing philosophical research. So this nevertheless means that a wide range of data can be used to conduct discourse analysis, including, but by no means limited to, mundane conversations. So again, I'll suggest you read the work of Stoke and Edward, Media Data. Even Goodman and a range of institutional talk. Like, see, yesterday, you must have realized all the channels were advocated that political party X is coming to the power and political party Y is exiting from the corridor of the power. But tomorrow, as the results unfolded itself, see, various narratives were being constructed by the party which is in the power and by the political party which is expecting to come into the power. And in between the two, see the kind of narratives the various channels study trying to construct. Some were in favor, some were in against. Some were defending their no. Statistically, what I presented to you or we presented to you, they are more or less similar to that. And they are not wrong also, because that's the nature of the statistics. And that's why exit polls, by all probability, their probability is very, very low. But forget about that. Suppose I'm interested to understand this phenomena, what was happening in media study from the discourse analysis point of view, particularly from the perspective of discursive psychology. So, it's not only what they were saying, the media data, but including not only televised discussions of the programs, but a range of institutional talk. What was the response on the part of CEC, Election Commission of India? What was the part of what was the responses on the part of both the political parties or all the political parties? And what was the responses on the part of the larger electorates? Were not saying anything, but they were saying a lot many things without uttering a single word. Okay. Similarly, friends, people say, generating a corpus. So once the sources of data have been decided upon, the next stage is to generate a corpus of data. So the corpus is the what? The corpus is nothing but the collection of all the appropriate data that will be analyzed. But what do you mean by appropriateness of appropriate of data? Do you think that all all of the corpus will make it in the final report? No. Your answer will be no. So when you say that not all of the corpus will make it into the final report, but it is necessary to look at a wide range of data to base the analysis on. And there is no such size for the data corpus, friends. The size of the corpus needs to be appropriate for the size of a project. So the expert opinions of the experts, opinions of the people who have done similar kind of work, or people who have been conducting such kind of research, their opinions do matter. And that too in a given context and time and space dimension. Similarly, transcribing the data. Similar kind of thing, I mean, I can keep talking on the what do you mean by preliminary reading? And as I said, preliminary reading means searching for action orientation. What's that? As with all types of qualitative analysis, it is necessary to read and reread the data until the analyst becomes familiar with it. So there is no shortcut to this time-consuming part of the analysis. Nor is there any correct way to go about it. So exactly what to look out for at this stage will depend on the specific research question being addressed. And therefore, it is very important to note that there are likely to be a whole range of action orientations being displayed in any data. So it is important that the analyst focuses only on what is relevant to the research questions at hand. That's why not we should now, it's high time, we should focus more on research questions than the objectives and hypotheses, particularly in the qualitative paradigm of research. And then, sometimes it appears so obvious generating the results is not so obvious, friends. What rhetoric strategies or international resources or rhetoric resources are you going to use to generate the result? Because so obviously result is not there, as it happens with the quantitative data. Okay, and finally, interpretive pursuits are important. And there you can talk about the ideological dilemmas also, building a case to support the findings or the subject position and identity. So it's not so obvious, which is appearing so obvious to generate the results. Time is not allowing because I have to talk something more and it is already 7:15, friends. But generating results demands interpretative repertoires. Similarly, it demands, friends, ideological dilemmas to be dealt with, or the subjective positions and identities. Only then you will be able to generate the results. And finally, you'll have to build a case to support the findings. How to build a case to support the findings? I mean, by this point in the analysis, what researcher is expected to do? Or simply, anybody would like to say that the researcher should have identified a number of discursive and rhetoric strategies that address the chosen research question. And it is like that, there are now a number of examples of these strategies. Yeah. So now it is a time to select all the examples of the chosen strategy or strategies. The analyst may find it best to copy and paste extracts into a new document under separate headings that address each of the strategies identified or something else. But anyway, it has specific techniques. Definitely, maybe when we will be organizing workshops, we'll be talking about. And finally, report writing. In qualitative research report writing, right? Report writing demands a unique skill. On the basis of unique set of skills, only you can do the report writing. It's not so obvious as it appears so obvious in quantitative research. Okay. So conclusively, I would like to say that it demands high quality analysis ability and skill. Very, very high. Okay. So high quality analysis include what? High quality analysis include a good selection of extracts drawn from an appropriate corpus of data and a good demonstration of familiarity with the related and relevant discursive strategies. And here is the challenge. Why? Because this requires a large amount of reading of the discursive literature. And that's why, see, time and again, what is emerging? What is the emergent theme? It is perhaps fifth or sixth day, that there is no substitute for readings. A researcher has to read a lot. And I would like to conclude that discourse analytic findings are often particularly insightful, and the analytic process, while lengthy, can be very, very enjoyable. This is one thing. Similarly, if you'll go, but I don't think now time permits, I wanted to talk about uh, uh, there are some very fantastic things that I had planned initially, but I think my time management, it's likely, I don't know how I lost so much time, but anyway, what happened. Uh, um, but I think today I haven't managed my time uh, so brilliantly as I would have. Uh, I could have been. But anyway, how to conduct discourse analysis. Okay, so the 8 stages or 8 steps that I have talked about, friends. What I would like to make a point is that not necessarily in the order I have discussed here, in the same order any researcher would like to do. That will depend on the research problem, that will depend upon research questions, that will depend upon the corpus of the data, that will depend upon n number of factors, friends. Well, okay. Uh, as I promised that sometimes what happens, we get confused. For example, uh, what uh, with the content analysis, but I think if I'm going to do a comparison between the content analysis and the discourse analysis, I'll not be able to do justice with the things that I want to do today in coming only 12 minutes left. Uh, Let me give you some conceptual framework for discourse analysis. Suppose somebody wants to understand learning and learners. Okay. And like me, there are many, but yes, I do like constructivist approach the most. So suppose I want to understand learning and learner from the social construction point of view or social constructivist point of view. Do you think I can use discourse analysis? If you think yes, so how will I frame my research project or research topic for this project? So simply, the social constructivist perspective of learning and learners. So that's it. So what you will do? Very simply, you will define what learning is, and you will say learning is an ongoing process of social participation, which suggests not only engaging in certain activities, but also being active participants in certain relationship networks and constructing identities of membership. No? Now, what will be the understanding of the learning? So, participating in communities of practice, a process of negotiated meaning. And then the social dimension of learning you will talk about. Then we'll talk about negotiations of meaning on the one hand and its social context on the other. No, meaning making in the service of the power, meaning making in the sets of social networks. And then you will do the discourse analysis. So this is initially you have set the tone. Now, the discursive role of semiotic elements of social life. Language does not objectively mirror the world, but rather plays an active role in constructing meaning in social relations. This is what this discourse analysis would like to, to advocate. So suppose somebody wants to study this in the framework of critical discourse analysis, CDA, very famous. Fairclough's framework of CDA, and then many others. So what will be the critical intention in this case? In this case, the critical intention will be to uncover and explain the role of discursive practice in the construction and maintenance of unequal power relations. Similarly, if I ask you the dialectical relations between discourses and other moments of social practice, what you will say as a researcher? Discourses are both constituted and constitutive. No? Now, keeping this in mind, what kind of research questions you will formulate? So you'll formulate the research questions. Number one, how did certain classroom participants from a variety of cultural backgrounds describe the status of communication among them? Fine. What else? What were the power relations among these teachers and students, and how did they evolve through the communication process? I know one study has been done by one gentleman, and recently I had an opportunity, not exactly this, but different perspective from one of the university from the Kerala, and that uh, uh, thesis came to me for evaluation. Similarly, how was, now what next? I mean, you just formulate the question, then see which questions can be investigated from the discourse analysis perspective. How was the participant's sense of self-constructed and transformed through communication? Or you can formulate questions like this: how did the power relations and identities affect the participants, especially the students? Access to negotiation of meaning. Similarly, you can formulate a question like this: how were the participants shifting power relations related to the contingent organizational and social context? Then, this study can be approached uh, in a different manner. The same can be done, the ethnographic approach, single case study, or critical discourse analysis. Sorry, friends. So if you are entering into the setting, that will be ethnographic in approach. To provide an holistic picture of communication web in a specific time and space-bound system, then single case study you'll have to approach. To analyze language beyond words and sentences for meanings that are related to power, for that you'll have to use textually centered approach of discourse analysis, or you can use critical discourse analysis. Okay, friends. So now the question is the methodology, what you will be doing: selecting the case and research participants, then the data collection, then the data analysis, right? And then you'll have to write the research findings, and then discourses of communication, and the production of ideology, so, and issues for improvement. So this is how we can go about this. I have just shown you, this is what we people generally I do in the workshop. take a context, and then see how it can be done, how it can be conducted. So how the research question can be formulated, how and on what basis you are going to adopt a particular methodology, and then all the research components. So friends, I would like to stop here. It has been a lovely journey along with you, but what I missed is the interaction. I would have enjoyed, but next time definitely I'll ask Dr. Gupta whenever he organizes this kind of thing. And direct communication should be there, not only the questions in the form of the chats and that. Mm, uh, but anyway, what should I do? Say, answering questions in a monotonous way, that would have been the reason. But anyway, so maybe let's see when and how things can be organized, and it depends on the interest of the participants, depending upon the time availability on my part, and because a particular workshop requires a whole lot of preparations, collecting the materials, organizing such a man on the basis of the specific focuses that we are going to this. So now I stop here, and it's over to the organizer. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the informative session. Hello.
हेलो.
Yes, sir. आवाज आ रही है?
हाँ, अब आ रही है.
ठीक है, sir. So thank you, sir, for the informative session.
Thank you. So I'm taking leave, right?
Okay, sir.